Good morning to everyone out there in YouTube land. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd. It's about 10:30 in the morning. It's a nice day off for me from my regular office job. It's brilliant out there. It is beautiful. The sun is shining. The sky is blue. It's about 80 degrees. Little humidity, not too bad though. But here I am trying to knock something else off my list of things to do. In fact, I keep making, larger and larger lists of things to take care of. And I knocked out some this morning. I'm going to do this right now, which will, for me, catch me up on all the reviews that I wanted to do on the books that I have read yet not spoken about. So I'm pretty happy about this. Today, we are going to be talking about Mayhem Sam. This is actually one of the latest drops from Death's Head Press in the Splatter Western releases. Death's Head Press is the ones that are putting these out. They're part of Dead Sky Publishing. And today, this is my 21st installment of a Splatter Western series book. Which for me is about like 1/3 of all the reviews I've done so far, to tell you the truth. These books are short. I can blow through them in a heartbeat and have in my mind everything that I need to say without having to go back chapter by chapter trying to remember what was in there before. The books typically tend to be pretty lean, say about 150 pages. Some barely break the 100-page mark. And two of the larger ones that I have read before this, being Dust and Last of the Ravagers, were like 250 and 283 pages. Or, I'm sorry, they were about 250 pages each. Whereas Mayhem Sam comes in at the 283-page mark. So this is the biggest one I've read. And before, if you're a fan of this stuff, you react. I personally have not read the Christopher Triana books yet in the 13th Coyote series. They clock in the two that's already been dropped at like 500 and 400 pages respectively. So they certainly win the Girth Award. Oh, and some news I can share with you about that as well is I actually reached out to Christopher Triana because I noticed that Death's Head Press has not dropped a new book in over a year. And it's like, do they still exist? Are people still working for them? And I was really wondering, mainly because I know that the Coyote trilogy is just that, a trilogy. So if I have the third book, it'd be easier for me to read 1, 2, 3 in a row. But he did respond to me, which I was very grateful that he did so. And he's currently not working still with Death's Head Press. In fact, he's got the ownership of his first two books, and when the third book in the trilogy does come out, it's going to be under the banner of Bad Dream Books. I have a link for that. I'll throw it down below in the description. So the third installment of the trilogy will be under that label. And this will occur, and I quote, when it is finished. So I hope to see that come out in the coming months, maybe within the next year, 2 tops. And I think that when I'm completed with that trilogy, that might be my last foray into the splatter western genre that I can foretell. I mean, over here on my bookshelf, that's all I have left to read. There's 2 small ones that came out just shortly after Mayhem Sam. Then there's And Hell Followed. And then the last 2 is Coyote 1 and 2. So after that, I have other ones. In fact, way here up on the top, I got a stack of books I had to get to, including 1 or 2 I'm really interested in. So we'll see. I mean, if I finish it, maybe there'll be more splatter westerns that come out I'll be interested in reading and telling you about. But time will tell, as I like to say. So without further ado, on with the show. Now, on its very basics, Mayhem Sam is the story of Samantha Gray, very young girl, teenager, and she gets married to a Confederate soldier, mistreated, almost enslaved in a way, finds out he's got a stash of gold, escapes, and then is looking for freedom. That is the general overall of the story. Okay, I'm going to go into that in more detail, of course, right now, but we're going to go into this with that framework in mind of what we're actually going to experience. Okay. That being said, it begins innocently enough with her wedding. Actually, no, we're going to go back a little bit. The book truly opens up with a pre-climax event in its opening scene. You know, one of those hook 'em early kind of jobs, and then cut to like 3 weeks earlier. But in this case, it opens here and then goes 3 months earlier for a gang called the Lovelock Gang and some of their mistreatable events that they are doing unto others while they're robbing or stealing or what have you. And then it jumps again to 1 year earlier. So doubly, wait, we got to come up to this opening scene later. So, and the 1 year earlier is where we, innocently enough, start with a wedding. In total, this book takes place almost over the course of 1 year, from the winter of 1866 to the winter of 1867, December to be exact. But it starts with a wedding. Young teenage, I cannot speak today. Young teenage Samantha Gray is going to be wed to an older Captain Elrod Sinclair Jakes. He's a Confederate captain. You have to understand, around this time of the genre, 1860s, the Civil War is coming to an end. So the Confederacy is starting to be demolished, disbanded. Confederacy for a while had their own currency. Confederate dollars are now considered worthless. So people who might have been riding the high horse in the military then in the Confederacy aren't so much now. So in this wedding, it's a pretty cheap affair too, like barely a couple people to even witness it, and they're all like family of some kind. Inexpensive, in the back of a farm kind of a thing, hardly no pomp and circumstance whatsoever. And in this gritty affair is where we start slowly seeing the dichotomy of Samantha in her beginning journey, because you have what should be a solemn and amazing event, her wedding, to what is almost being considered the equivalent of a business transaction. There is no love with this whatsoever. She's being married off by the father, who thinks that for him, she's going on to a better life. She thinks she's going on to a better life. Reality will set in soon enough. And it's good for us as the reader sometimes, because it sets our expectations low on the future of young Miss Samantha Jakes. And that abuse starts early enough. In fact, after the wedding, they've actually got to swing by like the father's farmstead and say goodbye or pick up some stuff or what have you before they move on to the Confederates' Sweet Pine. That's his plantation. And even for the very beginning of the journey, they have to come to like a fork in the road, and he's like, I'll let you choose if we go to the right or to the left. And she's like, well, I know how to get back to Papa's place. Take the river road. We'll get there in a heartbeat. Because I want to go there, get back on the road. We'll get to Sweet Pine right before, the sun sets. And she's like, he's like, darling, you don't know anything about traveling, do you? I'll tell you where we have to go. We got to take the other road. That's going to get us to your Papa's house nice and easy, probably faster. But we're not going to get to Sweet Pine until like after dawn. And she's like, I know you're wrong, but I can't say anything. He's my husband, So she's already taking like a back seat into a maybe traditional like wifely role back then. So he's degrading her, saying, you don't know shit about traveling or roads or which one's faster. Take it on me. And you kind of get the sense that from his perspective, Captain Jakes, she's in for a whole like, you're just a stupid woman kind of wife of a wife. As they're traveling as well, didn't mean to be that loud. As they're traveling as well, they're also traveling with the captain's mother. And the mother is just some decrepit, aged old woman who's also not much a fan of Samantha. She just wants to be in Sweet Pine taking care of business, thinks this is actually in the way. So she has to travel in the hansom with her the whole time. So the genesis of this new meeting, this new union betwixt the two, just sets the stage of what's, shall we say, the activities that are to follow and pan out. Well, as they get to Papa's house, they find out that Papa has died. So now she needs to take her handicapped younger brother, Johnny, and her younger sister, Claire, with her to Sweet Pine. And let's just say the addition of a couple extra bodies is not something Captain Jakes had in mind. So he's not thrilled about the idea as well. So he's already berating the wife a little bit, and she's coming with literally baggage of extra family members, extra mouths to feed. Now, while they set all this stuff up, it then shifts the focus and we go to another locale. We go to that first flashback of 3 weeks earlier, 3 months earlier, to that Lovelock gang. Okay. And here we're introduced more to like the handsome member of the gang whose name is Chance. And the gang is one of those that just kind of like robs and murders and rapes indiscriminately. They don't care. There's no fealty towards their fellow man or woman in them. It's just an entirely evil collection of miscreants. Oh, it's them and Chance. Chance is not like them. He's the pretty boy. He's trying to find a way to not be among them any longer, but he doesn't really have the means or the balls, so to speak, which will be funny later on, to do such a thing. And on a particular grizzly caper, he does find a way to kind of like sneak away during a fight or shootout with the local law. And unfortunately, my memory might be a little hazy on this one. I'm trying to remember if he even kind of double-crossed them in a way as he escaped. So if he leaves and they catch him, he's probably going to be killed. So now his leaving has to have that motivation of, and I have to stay one step in front of him. And especially, after he noticed how the Lovelock gang treats people in general when they invade them. Not just the treatment of women, the treatment of people in general. And Chance just does not have the stomach for it. So he gets away, and we'll do more on him later. Now, the author J.D. Graves actually goes into a lot of detail of like the internal monologues of Samantha over the course of the next 100 or so pages. And there's a necessity here because of how abused this woman gets practically on the daily. Okay, there's a very quick descent into, let's just call it an unhappy marriage. Okay, Captain Jakes doesn't want really anything to do with his new wife. I mean, and when he does even have sex with her, it's not pleasant. It's practically a degrading kind of sort of sex. He starts to treat her more like a servant of the house. It makes her sit a point. I didn't write this well. 1 second. I gotta look at my sentence. Okay. With the younger brother and him having a handicap, I don't know how much is mental. I know there is a facial deformity or something like that. But have him silence at all times. He is a never seen, never heard body in Captain Jakes' mind. So it's like, keep him silent always. So if little Johnny's playing at one point and a can falls off the table, she's getting whipped for it because she didn't do her job. But as all this degradation is happening page over page, we do find that Captain Jakes has moved on to the younger sister, Claire. Okay, and Claire has no problems whatsoever sleeping with Captain Jakes. And she thinks that she's kind of moving up in the world. Because even during the wedding, they had a little conversation like, oh, Papa's giving you to a Confederate captain, and with the war ending soon, there ain't going to be other Confederate captains for me to marry. Well, now she can get all the glory and not have to marry the guy. And she's moving up to be almost like the queen of Sweet Pine, Claire is. To the point now that she's following Captain Jakes more, that she starts to degrade and enslave her own sister Samantha in a day-to-day manner. I mean, they literally force her to eat dirt for her meal. There was one time after sex, the captain kind of like passes out and he's snoring. And Claire goes over to the corner where Samantha's kind of like chained, literally, and they're talking. And while they're there, like Claire's like picking her nose and they're chatting and she's rolling it up into a ball. And it's like, here, Claire, eat it. That's what a sister is doing to another sister. In fact, Captain Jakes goes so far, like I said, with the chains, he pierces Samantha's vagina with a ring. And he attaches a chain to that ring, which snakes out from her nether regions that he can tow her around the house if he cares. So the story kind of gets in truly like, what the fuck regions as they're going through this kind of stuff. And that treatment goes on for some time. Samantha dreams of her escape, but she has no idea how she can do it and survive, not really knowing the world. But she also knows if she leaves, she has to bring her brother Johnny with her. And how can she do that? She has no idea. So she kind of bides her time. She tries to find ways to like investigate and search the house, looking for weapons that she might be able to use that are not locked up. One night she's outside. She thinks she might be able to like go through a little swamp or whatever else and get away. And Captain Jakes finds her. And he just grabs her by the chain and drags her over to a crypt. And she's like, shit, I'm dead now. Throws her down into the crypt where it's dark as all hell. Lights a candle. Shows her all the dead bodies of the family around there. And says, I need you to clean up this crypt. Mama's going to die soon. And when she does, she has to be buried here. Break up the bones, but keep the skulls and put them over there in a pile. And do this and do that. And I want this done by morning. And then Captain Jakes leaves with the candle. So she's down there. She's frightened as all hell. Doesn't know how she's going to get this done. Has to try to break up bones and find a stick to do it or something like that. She's not in a good place. However, it does turn out she really is in a good place. Because that crypt is where Captain Jakes had hidden tons of Confederate gold. And while the Confederate currency might have devalued, gold is still gold. It can still be melted down and made into anything else. It's gold. So now she knows, I now have the means that I can escape and live. I can have my liberation. Her motivation starts going through the roof. But first, she'll have to take care of Captain Jakes and Claire. And that kind of sets up the majority of the rest of the novel. You know, escape, survival, striving for freedom. Add to that, Captain Jakes wasn't fully killed when she left, and is now chasing them. So now she's got a pursuer she needs to stay ahead of. Add to that, the Lovelock gang, upon robbing people nearby, hear a tale that there's gold over there in Sweet Pine. Now they want to go over to Sweet Pine as well. So now she's got other people after her as well. And this whole time, the way she's able to escape is by taking a coffin, putting the dead mother in it, and filling it with gold. And now she has to lug that around by cart and donkey wherever she's going to go. It's not going to be very fast, but she's got to do it smart. So eventually, Samantha hooks up with Chance, which you knew was going to happen, on his escaping, and they kind of find a we both need mutual freedom together event, which kind of brings the group to be more trusting of each other as much as they can trust one another. And they escape from freedom. It brings them to a small town, brings them to a whorehouse where the madam has a connection to Chance, and she'll give them rest from the road, for a price. But it doesn't help that she's like, where are you going? And they're like, Missouri. It's like, dude, you're too late. By the time you get to the mountain pass, it'll be snowed in. You'll probably be snowed in, and you'll be perished. You got to stay here for a few weeks. So then when you start traveling again, you'll be past the snows by the time you get there. I'm not trying to hurry this up at all, but that kind of coalesces into some miasma of situations in such a small town and in the whorehouse. Little one-off altercations between townfolk as Samantha starts slowly like getting her gusto, her strength up as far as like being the strong woman that's going to take them to freedom kind of a thing. And it goes deeper into like the growing attitudes and natures of the characters for a bunch of pages. And then, as you would all know, the Lovelock gang is there, Captain Elrod Jakes is there, they catch up, and you get to the opening chapters that set up the finale. They set it up 250 pages earlier. Now you're towards the end where it's actually going to happen. Now, this book is a splatter western. And at some point when I was reading it, even I started to realize, hey, where's the magic? Where's the supernatural? That tends to color a little bit, or sometimes a ton, of all these novels in the past. It wasn't just a western, which would be fine if it was, but that wasn't what most of them have been. So how does Mayhem Sam end up here? Well, it comes to the appearance of it quickly next. It turns out for a while that our pretty boy Chance has kind of had a problem with his crotch. Pretty sure it's some kind of STD or something like that. The itching, the burning when he pees, the razor blade types of pain that he's getting when he's even trying to do something simple, and just the god-awful sight of it. He's been having private part problems. Well, when he's hanging out in the whorehouse, he eventually gets two girls to help bathe him and take care of him that night. And they see something god-awful swollen hanging between his legs. And there's a black mass just dangling there. So they scream, they run out there, someone fetches the doctor, and he comes, he's like, Jesus Christ, how are you still alive? And decides to operate on him. And he tries to cut it away with a simple procedure and cure his ails if he can. For the moment, kind of goes all right. But for some god unforeseen reason, J.D. Graves uses this to add in, let me just say, something particularly stupid, in my opinion. Now, there's some kind of tentacular thing that's inside of Chance. And we see the first notion of it when Chance and Samantha are kind of having a little romantic moment. She's always found him gorgeous, but we didn't want to do anything about it. But now they get close to, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, and boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden, as they're doing it and they're kind of naked, like a tentacle comes out and wraps around her wrist or something like that. Another one comes around and wraps around her waist. And they like both freak out. And this thing kind of like goes back inside him. Needless to say, that ends any future romance betwixt them. And even later on. But first, I gotta segue for a second. So I mentioned the timeline flip that keeps happening, or at least happened originally in the beginning of the story, but it happens a couple of times later on. Like I said, the book only takes place over the course of 1 year. You had the pre-climax, in the very opening chapter, that went to a 3 months earlier, that went to a 1 year earlier. And then sometimes during the book, it jumps forward to the pre-climax and then back to like the present. And the present can either be like the past slavery or the later on whorehouse, depending upon what part of the story we're talking about. But then there's another jump that occurs. Little side adventure where the brother Johnny and Claire were on a stagecoach, kind of like getting away. And they were captured by Indians. And now Samantha and Chance have to go and rescue them. And it jumps to this event and literally slaps the reader in the face because there's a whole, what the hell is this situation that you have no real segue into? In fact, it was interesting because it jumps from one chapter where there was a countdown, let's say, of like 5, 4, 3, jump the paragraph, jump the scene, to 1, and that starts the next part of the time slip. So I had to look down at the page to make sure I didn't had ripped pages missed out of the book. And while this event adds trials and tribulations for our heroine, the main reason for it is to deal with the whole situation that I just segued away from, the tentacular thing in his testicles. Basically, this Cthulhu-esque tentacular monster in Chase's dick erupts when they're trying to free the sister and the brother from the Indians around a campfire. And this thing is like eating and absorbing people. It's walking around, dragging Chase along kind of above it in its mission of havoc. And when it is driven back, it just reabsorbs back into his crotch. It like disappears into his taint. And that, my friends, is the end of Mayhem Sam. If I were to just shut off the camera right now and ended the video, before saying this sentence, of course, you'd have a wind out of your sails feeling inside of you, as I had when I got to the end of this book. For me, like I said above, it's one of the longest splatter westerns that I have read. And while I've mentioned in the past the length of some of these books, because some are just too short, and more can be better, there are times when that isn't the case. And from a building up our hero point of view, it can be necessary to show in amazing detail each and every trial and tribulation of our main character. Hell, it works with Gone with the Wind, where the main character is a spoiled Southern Belle princess, and you can't stand her at the beginning. But even she has her trials and tribulations, and you're kind of seeing how a person who's incapable has to learn that she has to become capable. But the whole time, even if she's succeeding in whatever endeavor, she still yearns to be the pampered princess. Until eventually she gets fucked over enough that she has to take so much control that the control and the strength becomes her. And you can see the strength of the heroine that has emerged. And you can respect that. Like the try-fail cycles eventually becoming try-succeed. And here, it's trying to do that, but the poor to power journey, while the poor is very well described, the power doesn't seem to have the evolution that brings along a respectability to the character, And it can easily be corrected of me, saying, hey, Joe, she's not a heroine. It's not supposed to embody a hero. And I can concede that point to an extent. Survival, while it may be heroic, survival doesn't make a hero per se. It can, but it's not just by surviving you are a hero. So I really don't know how to conclude this properly enough. It's one of those things where, hate saying that. It's one of those things that we've seen her almost escape. The pursuers have caught up to her. Now she's got to get past that. And by the way, there is a final scene. The crotch monster is not the finale, but it's pretty damn close to it. But there is a finale that she has to overcome her pursuers in such a way. There's TNT being exploded. There's stuff's happening, but it does still have a nether-ish finale to it that I personally just found disappointing. Of course, I am a hard person to please to begin with. So I'm going to say very simply, if you're enjoying splatter westerns or you're thinking about getting into them, you've got to make up your own mind. I've given you the basics. There are times that things like the scene of the tentacle monster might have come at just a great time for you, and you might enjoy that aspect of reading it. Okay? And just to put a small little example, Trey Parker, Matt Stone do South Park. Love South Park, still watch it to this day, never miss a new episode, right? They did the play, The Book of Mormon. My wife and I do go see plays and shows on Broadway and whatnot. Someone got us tickets. We went to go see it. You know, that and Hamilton are like the two biggest things that were going on around now. We went and see it, didn't enjoy it. As much as I love their humor, I didn't think it came across the way I wished it would come across. And some things were just extremely blatant that, because I'm so used to their humor, didn't really find funny. Like, there's a warlord over in Africa. What's his name? I think it's like Butt Fucking Naked was the warlord's name. And I could see where that would be funny. It just didn't strike me at the time. So I was a disappointed person regarding that. So that's kind of like where my attitude comes from being pleased. And unfortunately, I have to say that Mayhem Sam did not please me as much as I hoped that it was going to. If it just even didn't do the supernatural part of it, while it would have been off-brand for a splatter western, would have made it a better book. But I am not J.D. Graves, and J.D. Graves is the person putting pen to paper in this novel. So, all right, that's all I have for you today. I want to thank you if you've gotten this far. Hopefully I didn't bore you. Hopefully some of this was enlightening to you, but let me know. I'm going to pop the banner up there. Hopefully you can click on a subscribe button. That'll help me out tremendously. And maybe someday I don't have to just take off from work to knock out some of these things. It'll be a full-time job for me. Okay? Otherwise, thank you very much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day, week, month, what have you. And I'll see you soon enough. Bye-bye.